My name is Harper Whitman. I'm 32 years old, and I stood alone at the entrance of the Grand Rosewood Ballroom, clutching two empty name cards that were supposed to say Mom and Dad. Around me, hundreds of guests in designer gowns and sharp tuxedos floated through the golden glow of crystal chandeliers while a jazz quartet played softly in the corner. I looked down at the two vacant seats at table number 1, the VIP table right beside the stage, where my parents' names gleamed on polished place cards. My phone buzzed in my hand. A text from my mother. "We're so sorry, Harper. We completely forgot. We're at Emma's 3rd birthday party. It's 2 hours away. We can't make it. Congratulations, though." My chest tightened. My fingers went numb. And in that moment, standing in the middle of my greatest professional triumph, I made a decision that would blow my family apart forever. Before we dive into what happened next, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you've ever felt overlooked by the people who were supposed to celebrate you, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story is about to take you on a wild ride. Trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. I grew up in a small town called Maplewood, the kind of place where everyone knew your name and your business. My family was solidly middle class. My father Douglas worked as an accountant, my mother Diane managed a local gift shop, and we lived in a modest 3-bedroom house with a white picket fence. Everything seemed normal on the surface, but from the moment my sister Bethany was born when I was 5 years old, the balance in our household shifted in a way I didn't understand until much later. Bethany came into the world fragile and underweight, spending her first weeks in the neonatal intensive care unit. My parents were terrified they might lose her. When she finally came home, they wrapped her in layers of protection and attention that never seemed to lift, even as she grew stronger. I watched from the sidelines as every fever, every scraped knee, every bad dream became a family emergency. Meanwhile, I learned to stay quiet, to not ask for too much, to be the easy child. When I was 12, I had my first piano recital. I'd practiced for months, my fingers aching from running scales over and over. The night of the performance, I wore a blue velvet dress my grandmother had bought me, and I was ready to make my parents proud. But 2 hours before we were supposed to leave, Bethany spiked a low-grade fever. It was 99.2 degrees. My mother decided they couldn't leave her with a babysitter. My father drove me to the recital, sat through my performance with his arms crossed and his eyes on his watch, then rushed me home immediately after. No celebration dinner, no photo, just a quick "you did fine, honey" before he disappeared into Bethany's room to check on her. I cried myself to sleep that night, but I learned an important lesson. I didn't matter as much. I told myself it was temporary, that once Bethany got older, things would balance out. They never did. When I earned a full academic scholarship to a prestigious university 3 states away, my parents gave me a distracted congratulations over dinner, then immediately pivoted to discussing Bethany's SAT prep classes. When I graduated summa cum laude 4 years later, they attended the ceremony but left early to get home for Bethany's high school graduation party the next day. I stood alone in my cap and gown, watching families take photos, feeling invisible even in my proudest moment. At 18, I decided I was done waiting for their attention. I moved across the country for college and worked 3 part-time jobs to cover my living expenses beyond what the scholarship provided. I waitressed at a diner on weekends, tutored other students during the week, and cleaned offices at night. I was exhausted all the time, but I was building something that belonged to me. My parents rarely called. When they did, the conversations were brief and centered on Bethany. How was Bethany doing in her classes? Did I know Bethany had joined the cheerleading squad? Wasn't it wonderful that Bethany had so many friends? I became a supporting character in my own family's story. 3 years ago, Bethany got married in a lavish ceremony that cost $45,000. My parents paid for every penny. The wedding was held at a country club with 300 guests, a live band, an open bar, and a 7-tier cake. I was asked to be a bridesmaid, which really meant I was voluntold to handle logistics nobody else wanted to touch. I coordinated with vendors, picked up out-of-town relatives from the airport, and stayed up until 3 in the morning assembling wedding favors. At the reception, my mother introduced me to distant relatives as our hard-working daughter who's still figuring things out, while Bethany was our pride and joy. So settled and happy, I smiled through clenched teeth and drank too much champagne. When I got home that night, I made myself a promise. I would build something so undeniable that they'd have no choice but to see me. For the next 2 years, I poured everything I had into my tech startup, EduTech Solutions, a platform designed to help underserved schools access quality educational resources. I worked 16-hour days. I missed birthdays, holidays, and any semblance of a social life. I lived on instant ramen and black coffee. My apartment was a studio with a broken heater. But it was mine. And it was where I built my empire. My assistant Riley, a sharp 26-year-old woman with fire engine red hair and a work ethic that rivaled my own, stayed by my side through every late night and early morning. My lead engineer Marlon, a quiet genius with dark-rimmed glasses and a dry sense of humor, turned down a job offer from Google to help me build the platform from scratch. Together, we created something incredible. In our first year, we hit $5 million in revenue. In our second year, we tripled it. And then, 6 months ago, I received an email that changed everything. Sinclair Education Group, one of the largest educational corporations in the country, wanted to partner with us. The deal was worth $15 million. They wanted to host a gala to announce the partnership, a black tie event at the Grand Rosewood, the fanciest hotel in the city, and they wanted me to be the keynote speaker. This was it. The moment I'd been working toward my entire life, and for the first time, I allowed myself to hope that maybe, just maybe, my parents would finally see me. The email from Sinclair Education Group arrived on a Tuesday morning in late February. I was sitting at my desk in our small but growing office, surrounded by whiteboards covered in flowcharts and sticky notes, when my inbox pinged. The subject line read, "Partnership Proposal and Gala Invitation." My hands trembled as I opened it. The message was formal but warm, signed by Frederick Sinclair himself, the CEO of the company. He praised our work, outlined the terms of the partnership, and invited me to be the featured speaker at a gala celebrating the deal. The event would take place on March 28 at the Grand Rosewood Ballroom. It would host 400 guests, including investors, educators, journalists, and other tech entrepreneurs. There would be a 5-course meal prepared by a Michelin star chef, a live orchestra, and a formal contract signing ceremony. I read the email 3 times, my heart pounding harder with each pass. This wasn't just a business deal. This was validation. This was proof that all the sleepless nights, the financial struggles, the moments I wanted to quit, had been worth it. I called my mother that evening. My stomach fluttered with nerves as the phone rang. When she picked up, her voice was distracted. "Hello," she said, and I could hear the television in the background. I forced enthusiasm into my voice. "Mom, hi, I have some really exciting news." There was a pause. "Oh? What's that, honey?" I told her everything. The partnership, the $15 million deal, the gala. I explained how important this night was, how it represented everything ID worked for. I tried to keep my voice steady, to not sound desperate for her approval. But I could feel the little girl inside me begging to be seen. When I finished, there was silence on the other end. Then my mother said, "That sounds nice, honey. When is it?" My throat tightened. Nice. That was the word she chose. "March 28th, I said. "It's a Saturday evening. It's formal. And I'd really love for you and Dad to be there." Another pause. "Is it really that important?" I felt like I'd been slapped. My voice cracked despite my best efforts. "Yes, Mom. It's the most important night of my career." She sighed. "Well, let me check with your father. I'll get back to you." She hung up without saying goodbye. 2 days later, my father called. His voice was gruff, businesslike. Harper, your mother told me about your event. I gripped the phone tighter. It's not just an event, Dad. It's the biggest deal my company has ever made. He cleared his throat. Right. Well, be there. What time should we arrive? Relief flooded through me so suddenly that tears sprang to my eyes. Really? You'll come? He sounded almost offended. Of course, well, come. You're our daughter. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe things were changing. Maybe they finally understood how hard I'd worked. I thanked him 3 times before hanging up, then immediately started planning. I wanted everything to be perfect. I reserved 2 seats at the VIP table, right next to the stage, and had custom name cards printed with my parents' names in elegant gold script. I hired a stylist to help me find the perfect dress, settling on a navy blue floor-length gown with delicate beading along the bodice. It cost $3,000, more than I'd ever spent on clothing in my life, but I wanted to look the part. I prepared my speech meticulously, writing and rewriting it a dozen times. I included a section thanking my parents for their unwavering support, even though the words felt hollow. But I told myself it didn't matter. They were coming. That's what mattered. In the weeks leading up to the gala, I sent my parents 3 reminder emails with all the details: the date, the time, the dress code, the address. I even offered to arrange a car service to pick them up from their house in Maplewood, which was 2 hours away. My mother replied to one of the emails with a thumbs-up emoji. That was it. No words, just an emoji. I told myself not to read into it. The night before the gala, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, running through my speech in my head, imagining the moment I'd see my parents in the audience. I pictured my mother wiping away proud tears, my father giving me a rare smile. I imagined introducing them to Frederick Sinclair, to Riley and Marlon, to all the important people who'd believed in me when my own family hadn't. I imagined, for once in my life, being enough. When my alarm went off at 6 in the morning, I was already awake. I spent the day in a blur of final preparations, hair and makeup appointments, a last-minute run-through of the presentation slides, a frantic phone call with the event coordinator about seating arrangements. By the time I arrived at the Grand Rosewood at 5:30 that evening, my nerves were buzzing like live wires. The ballroom was breathtaking. The ceiling soared 3 stories high, dripping with chandeliers that cast a warm golden glow over everything. Round tables draped in ivory linen filled the space, each one topped with towering arrangements of white roses and hydrangeas. A stage had been set up at the front of the room, flanked by 2 massive screens that would display the presentation. A jazz quartet played soft background music while waitstaff in crisp uniforms made final adjustments to the table settings. I stood at the entrance, watching guests begin to arrive, and checked my watch. 6:15. My parents should have been here by now. By 6:30, the ballroom was filling with guests. CEOs in expensive suits, investors with designer watches glinting under the chandeliers, educators in elegant cocktail dresses. Everyone looked polished and important, and the energy in the room buzzed with anticipation. I stood near the entrance, scanning every face that walked through the doors, searching for my parents. My phone was clutched in my hand, the screen lighting up every few minutes as I checked for messages. Nothing. Table number 1 sat near the stage, the best seats in the house. 2 place cards with my parents' names faced the room like a promise I'd made to myself. The chairs remained empty. At 6:45, my phone buzzed. My heart leapt. Finally. But when I looked at the screen, my stomach dropped. It was a text from my mother. I opened it with shaking hands. Harper, we're so sorry. Bethany's daughter Emma is turning 3 today. We completely forgot when we agreed to your event. We're at the birthday party in Riverside. It's a 2-hour drive. We can't make it. Congratulations though. I read the message once, twice, 3 times. Each time, The words felt more impossible. They forgot. They forgot the most important night of my professional life because they were at a 3-year-old's birthday party. I could see the scene so clearly in my mind. My parents sitting in Bethany's backyard, probably eating cake, watching a toddler who wouldn't even remember this birthday tear into presents. And they'd chosen that over watching their own daughter sign a $15 million deal. My vision blurred. For a moment, I thought I might be sick. The ballroom spun around me, the golden light suddenly too bright, the chatter of guests too loud. I pressed my back against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. I'd reminded them 3 times. 3 times. I'd sent detailed emails with the date, the address, the time. I'd offered to arrange transportation. And they still forgot. Or maybe they didn't forget at all. Maybe they just didn't care enough to choose me over Bethany's daughter's birthday party. The thought hit me like a punch to the chest. I wasn't even competing with my sister anymore. I was competing with her children. And I was still losing. Harper? Are you okay? Riley's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. I looked up to see her standing in front of me. Her red hair swept into an elegant updo. Her green dress shimmering under the lights. Her face was creased with concern. I tried to smile, but my face wouldn't cooperate. "I'm fine," I said, but my voice cracked. Riley wasn't convinced. She glanced at my phone, still clutched in my hand, then at the empty seats at table number 1. Her expression darkened. "They're not coming, are they?" I couldn't speak. I just shook my head. Riley's jaw tightened. "Harper, I'm so sorry." I swallowed hard, forcing the tears back. "It's fine. It doesn't matter." But it did matter. It mattered so much that I felt like I was drowning. At 7 o'clock, the event coordinator signaled that it was time to begin. Guests took their seats, the jazz quartet faded into silence, and a hush fell over the room. I stood backstage, gripping the edge of a curtain, watching the sea of faces settle into anticipation. And then I looked at table number 1 again. Those 2 empty chairs. Those name cards that might as well have been tombstones marking the death of my hope. Something inside me shifted. A spark of anger ignited beneath the hurt, burning hotter and brighter with every second. My parents had chosen to ignore me my entire life. They'd missed my recitals, downplayed my achievements, and prioritized Bethany at every turn. And now, on the most important night of my career, they'd done it again. But this time, I wasn't going to smile and pretend it didn't hurt. This time, I was going to do something about it. I pulled out my phone and called the event coordinator. When she answered, I didn't waste time. "I need you to change the name cards at table number 1, I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. She sounded confused. "Change them? But those are reserved for your parents." I took a deep breath. "My parents aren't coming. I want you to put Riley Chen and Marlon Foster at that table instead." There was a pause. "Are you sure?" I'd never been more sure of anything in my life. "Absolutely. Do it now." 5 minutes later, the name cards were changed. I found Riley and Marlon standing together near the bar, nursing glasses of champagne and chatting with a group of engineers from our company. When I approached them, Riley's face lit up, but it dimmed when she saw my expression. "Harper, what's wrong?" I gestured toward table number 1. "I need you both to sit there." They followed my gaze. Marlon's eyebrows shot up. "Harper, that's your parents' table." I met his eyes, my voice firm. "Not anymore. You two have been more family to me than they ever were. You've earned those seats. Please." Riley's eyes filled with tears. She didn't say anything, just pulled me into a tight hug. When she finally let go, Marlon squeezed my shoulder, his usual stoic expression softening into something warm. "We'd be honored," he said quietly. The 3 of us walked to table number 1 together. As we sat down, I felt the weight of curious eyes on us. Other guests at nearby tables whispered, clearly noticing that the 2 people sitting in the VIP spots weren't the middle-aged couple they'd probably expected. I didn't care. For the first time all night, I felt like I could breathe. Sitting at table number 1 felt surreal. The table was positioned so close to the stage that I could see the individual threads in the velvet curtains. The centerpiece was a towering arrangement of white peonies and roses that probably cost more than my first car. Crystal glasses sparkled under the chandeliers, and the silverware gleamed like it had never been touched. Riley sat on my right, Marlon on my left, and, for the first time that evening, I didn't feel alone. Riley reached under the table and squeezed my hand. Her touch was warm, grounding. "Are you sure about this?" she whispered. I nodded. "I've never been more sure of anything." Marlon leaned closer, his voice low. "Your parents are going to lose their minds when they find out." A bitter smile crossed my face. "Good. Maybe they'll finally pay attention." The event coordinator took the stage to welcome everyone, her voice bright and professional as she introduced the evening's program. A 5-course meal would be served while guests mingled, followed by speeches and the formal contract signing. The first course arrived shortly after, a delicate salad with arugula, candied walnuts, and goat cheese drizzled with balsamic reduction. I pushed the greens around my plate, my appetite completely gone, but Riley and Marlon dove in enthusiastically, and watching them enjoy themselves made something inside me unclench just a little. Around us, other guests chatted and laughed, the ballroom filled with the hum of conversation. A venture capitalist at the next table leaned over and introduced himself to Riley, asking about her role at the company. Riley lit up, launching into an explanation of how she'd been with me from day one, managing everything from scheduling to investor relations to crisis management. The man was clearly impressed. He handed her his business card and told her to reach out if she ever wanted to explore other opportunities. Riley glanced at me with a grin and tucked the card into her purse, but she whispered, "I'm not going anywhere." Marlon, meanwhile, struck up a conversation with a woman across the table who worked in software development for a major university. They talked animatedly about coding frameworks and user interface design, their hands gesturing as they debated the merits of different programming languages. Watching them thrive in this environment, seeing them be recognized for their brilliance, made my decision feel even more right. These were the people who deserved to be celebrated, not 2 people who couldn't even bother to show up. The second course arrived, a creamy butternut squash soup garnished with crispy sage. I managed a few spoonfuls, more to keep up appearances than out of any real desire to eat. Riley caught me staring at the stage, where my name was displayed on the massive screens in elegant script. "You're going to be amazing up there," she said softly. I wanted to believe her, but my chest felt tight with a swirl of emotions I couldn't quite name. Anger, sadness, determination, all tangled together in a knot I couldn't untie. By the time the third course was served, a perfectly seared salmon with roasted asparagus and lemon butter sauce, I'd started to relax. The wine helped. So did the laughter at our table. Marlon told a story about the first time he met me, how I'd interviewed him in a coffee shop because I couldn't afford to rent an office yet. "She spilled her latte all over my resume," he said, grinning, "and then she offered me the job anyway, even though I'm pretty sure she couldn't actually pay me for the first 3 months." Riley laughed. "She paid you in pizza and promises." Marlon raised his glass. "Best decision I ever made." I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, but this time they weren't from sadness. These people believed in me when I was nobody. They stayed when things got hard. They celebrated my wins and picked me up after my losses. They were my family, even if we didn't share blood. The fourth course was a tender beef tenderloin with a red wine reduction, accompanied by garlic mashed potatoes and roasted root vegetables. By this point, the ballroom was buzzing with energy. Guests moved between tables, networking and exchanging business cards. I saw Frederick Sinclair across the room, laughing with a group of educators. He caught my eye and gave me a warm smile and a thumbs up. My stomach flipped. In less than an hour, I'd be on that stage, speaking in front of 400 people, signing a deal that would change my company's trajectory forever. And my parents would have no idea. because they'd chosen not to be here. The fifth and final course was a decadent tiramisu, the layers of mascarpone and espresso-soaked ladyfingers practically melting on the tongue. Dessert was accompanied by champagne, and the event coordinator announced that speeches would begin in 10 minutes. My heart started to race. Riley must have noticed, because she leaned over and whispered, "Breathe. You've got this." I nodded, trying to calm the frantic beating in my chest. I excused myself to the restroom, needing a moment alone to collect myself. In the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. She looked polished, confident, successful, but her eyes were rimmed with red and her smile didn't quite reach them. I gripped the edge of the sink and gave myself a stern talking to. "You did this. You built this company from nothing. You earned this moment. Don't let them take it from you." When I returned to the table, the lights had dimmed slightly, and a spotlight illuminated the stage. The event coordinator stepped up to the microphone, her voice ringing clear through the ballroom. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. It is my honor to introduce the woman whose vision and determination made this partnership possible. Please welcome the CEO of EduTech Solutions, Harper Whitman." The room erupted in applause. Riley and Marlon stood, clapping louder than anyone else. I rose from my seat, my legs shaky, and made my way to the stage. The spotlight was blinding. My hands trembled as I gripped the microphone, and then I looked out at the audience, at the hundreds of faces turned toward me, and I saw Riley and Marlon in the front row, their expressions full of pride and support. I took a deep breath, and I began to speak. The microphone felt cold in my hand. For a split second, I forgot every word I'd planned to say. The faces in the audience blurred together into a sea of expectation, and the silence pressed down on me like a physical weight. But then I saw Riley mouth the words, "You've got this," and something inside me steadied. I cleared my throat and began. "Good evening, everyone. My name is Harper Whitman, and 3 years ago, I was working out of a 10 by 15-foot office that smelled like mildew and broken dreams." A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. I smiled, feeling the tension in my shoulders ease just a fraction. I had 3 employees, a shoestring budget, and a vision that most people thought was naive at best and delusional at worst. I wanted to build a platform that would give underserved schools access to the same quality educational tools that wealthy districts took for granted. People told me it was too ambitious. They said the market was oversaturated. They said it'd never get funding. And for a long time, it looked like they were right. I paused, letting the weight of those words settle. In our first year, I was rejected by 27 investors. 27 people looked at my pitch and said no. I maxed out 3 credit cards, keeping the company afloat. I worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week. There were nights I fell asleep at my desk and woke up with keyboard imprints on my face. More laughter, softer this time, tinged with sympathy. I glanced down at Riley and Marlon. Riley's eyes were glassy with unshed tears. Marlon nodded at me, his expression serious and encouraging. I took a breath and continued. But I wasn't doing it alone. I had people who believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. My assistant, Riley Chen, sold her car to help me cover payroll during our worst month. She stayed with me until 3 in the morning countless times, stuffing envelopes, cold calling potential clients, doing whatever needed to be done. She never complained. She never asked for a raise. She just showed up, day after day, because she believed in what we were building. I gestured toward Riley. "Riley, would you please stand?" Riley's face flushed as she rose from her seat. The audience erupted in applause, and I saw her wipe a tear from her cheek. When she sat back down, I turned my attention to Marlon. "And then there's Marlon Foster, my lead engineer." Marlon had a job offer from Google, one of the biggest tech companies in the world. But he turned it down to come work for a startup that couldn't even afford to rent office space. He built our platform from scratch, coding for 18 hours straight some days, fueled by nothing but coffee and stubbornness. Every feature, every line of code, every innovation you see in our product is because Marlon refused to give up. Marlon stood when I asked, looking slightly embarrassed but deeply moved. The applause was deafening. I waited for it to die down before I continued. These two people are the reason I'm standing here tonight. Not because they're employees, but because they're family. Real family isn't just about who you're related to by blood. It's about who shows up. It's about who stays when things get hard. It's about who believes in you when the rest of the world walks away. My voice cracked on the last sentence, and I had to pause to steady myself. The ballroom was completely silent now, everyone hanging on my words. I hadn't planned to say any of this. My original speech had been polished and professional, full of corporate jargon about synergy and market disruption, but standing on that stage, looking out at Riley and Marlon, I couldn't bring myself to deliver those hollow words. This moment was too important, too real. 3 years ago, I had nothing but a dream and two people crazy enough to believe in it. Tonight, I'm signing a $15 million partnership with Sinclair Education Group. Tonight, we're going to change the lives of millions of students across this country. And I couldn't have done any of it without the people sitting in the front row. I paused, my eyes drifting involuntarily to the 2 seats where Riley and Marlon sat, the seats that should have held my parents. A lump formed in my throat, but I swallowed it down. So thank you, Riley. Thank you, Marlon. Thank you for being the family I needed. Thank you for showing up. The applause that followed was overwhelming. People rose to their feet, a standing ovation that seemed to go on forever. I stood at the microphone, blinking back tears, trying to hold myself together. When the applause finally faded, Frederick Sinclair joined me on stage. He was a tall man in his 60s with silver hair and a kind smile. He shook my hand firmly, then turned to address the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not often that you meet someone with Harper's combination of vision, grit, and heart. When my team first brought EduTech Solutions to my attention, I was impressed by the product. But after meeting Harper and her team, I was inspired by the people behind it. This partnership isn't just about business. It's about values. It's about integrity. And it's about building something that matters. He pulled a leather portfolio from under his arm and opened it to reveal the contract. 2 copies, each dozens of pages thick, bound in navy blue folders. He handed me a gold pen, and together we signed on the dotted lines. Cameras flashed. The audience erupted in applause again, and somewhere in the back of my mind, a small voice whispered, "They should have been here." After the signing, I posed for photos with Frederick, with Riley and Marlon, with a handful of investors and journalists who wanted a quote for their articles. Everyone wanted to shake my hand, to congratulate me, to tell me how inspiring my speech had been. I smiled and thanked them, playing the part of the gracious CEO. But inside I felt hollow. When the formalities were finally over, I slipped away from the crowd and found a quiet corner near the back of the ballroom. I pulled out my phone, half expecting to see a message from my parents. Maybe they'd realized their mistake. Maybe they'd sent an apology. But there was nothing. I opened my messages and stared at my mother's earlier text. "We're so sorry. Bethany's daughter Emma is turning 3 today. We completely forgot when we agreed to your event. We can't make it. Congratulations though. Congratulations though." Like it was an afterthought. Like my entire career was just a footnote in the story of Bethany's life. I felt the anger surge back, hot and sharp. But beneath it was something else. Grief. I was grieving the parents I'd always wanted but never had. The parents who would have moved heaven and earth to be here tonight. The parents who would have been proud. I shoved my phone back into my purse and returned to the ballroom. The party was in full swing now, guests mingling and laughing, the jazz quartet playing upbeat tunes. Riley found me almost immediately and pulled me onto the dance floor. "Come on, boss. You're not allowed to mope tonight. You just signed a $15 million deal. We're celebrating." I let her drag me into the crowd, and for a little while, I let myself forget. I danced with Riley, with Marlon, with a few investors who were surprisingly good at the foxtrot. I drank champagne and laughed at Marlon's terrible jokes, and for a few hours, I felt something close to happy. But when I finally got home that night, long after midnight, the apartment was dark and empty. I kicked off my heels, peeled off my dress, and collapsed onto my bed. And then, finally, I let myself cry. I cried for the little girl who'd played piano at a recital to an empty seat. I cried for the college graduate who'd stood alone at commencement. I cried for the woman who'd just achieved the dream of a lifetime and had no one to call. I cried until there were no tears left. And when I woke up the next morning, my eyes swollen and my head pounding, I made a decision. I was done chasing their approval. I was done begging for scraps of their attention. If they didn't want to be part of my life, fine. I'd build a life so full, so meaningful, that their absence wouldn't matter. But first, they needed to understand exactly what they'd chosen to miss. The photos started appearing online within hours. Guests at the gala had posted pictures on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. There were shots of me on stage, holding the oversized symbolic check for $15 million. There were pictures of Frederick Sinclair and me shaking hands. And there were pictures of table number 1, where Riley and Marlon sat in the seats meant for my parents. One photo in particular went viral. A guest had snapped a candid shot of the three of us laughing together. The VIP table clearly visible with Riley's and Marlon's name cards in the foreground. The caption read, "When your real family shows up, CEO Harper Whitman celebrates her $15 million partnership with the people who earned their seats." By Sunday morning, the post had over 10,000 likes and hundreds of comments. Most were supportive, praising me for recognizing the people who'd helped me succeed. But a few were critical, calling me disrespectful for snubbing my parents. Someone shared the post in a Maplewood community group, and within hours, half the town knew what had happened. My phone started buzzing relentlessly. Texts from old high school acquaintances I hadn't spoken to in years. Messages from distant cousins. Even my childhood piano teacher sent me a note asking if everything was okay. But the call I'd been dreading came at 11 o'clock Sunday night. My mother. I stared at the screen for a long moment, my thumb hovering over the decline button. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let the call go to voicemail and deal with it later. But another part of me, the part that had been desperate for her attention my entire life, couldn't help but answer. "Hello." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Harper." My mother's voice was sharp, venomous. I'd heard her use this tone before, but never directed at me. Usually, it was reserved for telemarketers or people who cut her off in traffic. "What the hell is this? Why are strangers sitting in our seats?" I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "They're not strangers, Mom. They're my team. You didn't show up. We told you we had Emma's birthday." Her voice rose, shrill and indignant. "You're so selfish, Harper. That was our table. We're your parents." The word selfish hit me like a slap. I felt my own anger rising to meet hers. "I reminded you 3 times about the gala, Mom. 3 times. I sent you detailed emails. I even offered to arrange a car service. You said you'd be there." "We forgot," she snapped. "People forget things, Harper. You can't hold that against us. Family comes first. Bethany needed us at Emma's party." I laughed, a bitter sound that didn't feel like it came from me. "Family comes first? That's rich, coming from you. You've put Bethany first my entire life. I just wanted one night. One night where you showed up for me." "Don't you dare," my mother hissed. "We've always supported you. We came to your graduation. You left early." I shot back. "You left my college graduation early to get back for Bethany's high school party. You paid $45,000 for her wedding and couldn't even send me a card when I started my company. So don't tell me you've always supported me, because we both know that's a lie." There was a pause on the other end of the line. When my mother spoke again, her voice was icy. You're embarrassing this family, Harper. Those photos are all over the internet. People are talking. You made us look like terrible parents. Maybe that's because you are terrible parents, I said quietly. The line went dead. Shed hung up on me. I sat there in the dark, phone still pressed to my ear, feeling strangely numb. Part of me wanted to call her back, to apologize, to smooth things over the way I always had. But the rest of me felt something it'd never felt before. Relief. It finally said what it'd been holding in for 30 years. And it felt like exhaling after holding my breath for too long. But the peace didn't last. At 12:30 in the morning, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Bethany. I should have known she'd get involved. Bethany never could resist inserting herself into drama, especially when she could position herself as the victim. I opened the message, already bracing myself. It was long, a wall of text that I had to scroll through. Harper, you're being ridiculous. Mom and Dad were at my daughter's party because I needed them. You're an adult. You don't need them anymore. Stop being petty. This is exactly why you're alone. You push everyone away with your drama. Grow up. You're making our family look bad because you can't handle the fact that the world doesn't revolve around you. Honestly, I'm embarrassed to be related to you right now. I read it twice, each time feeling the words cut deeper. Bethany had always been good at twisting the knife, but this was a new level of cruelty. My hands shook as I typed out a response. I've been an adult since I was 18, Beth, because no one ever helped me. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college. I built a company from nothing while you were planning weddings and baby showers on Mom and Dad's dime. I didn't ask for much. I just wanted them to show up for one night. But apparently, that was too much to ask. You get everything. Can't I have one night? I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Her response came almost immediately. This is why you're alone, Harper. You push everyone away with your drama. Grow up. That was it. No acknowledgement of anything I'd said. No empathy. Just another accusation that I was the problem. I blocked her number. Then I blocked my mother's. Then my father's. Even though he hadn't called yet. I knew he would eventually, and I didn't want to hear it. I turned off my phone and sat in the dark, feeling the weight of what I'd just done settle over me. I'd just cut off my entire family. And instead of feeling guilty, I felt lighter. By Monday morning, the story had taken on a life of its own. The Maplewood Gazette, our hometown's small newspaper, published an article titled, "Local Tech CEO Celebrates Success Without Family. Here is Why." The journalist had interviewed several guests who'd attended the gala, and they'd pieced together the story of my parents' absence and my decision to give their seats to Riley and Marlon. The article was surprisingly sympathetic. It praised me for recognizing the people who'd truly supported me, and included quotes from guests calling my speech one of the most moving they'd ever heard. It also included a brief interview with Frederick Sinclair, who said, "Harper Whitman is exactly the kind of leader this world needs. She understands that loyalty and respect are earned, not given." But the article also included the other side. Someone, I suspected one of my mother's friends, had provided a quote defending my parents. "Diane and Douglas Whitman are wonderful people who've always supported both their daughters. It's unfortunate that Harper chose to publicly embarrass them over a simple scheduling conflict." The comments section on the article's website was a war zone. Half the commenters praised me for standing up for myself. The other half called me ungrateful and disrespectful. I tried not to read them, but I couldn't help myself. Each negative comment felt like a punch to the gut, even though I knew they didn't have the full story. But then, something unexpected happened. My inbox started filling with messages from people I didn't know. Strangers who'd read the article or seen the photos online and wanted to share their own stories. A woman named Patricia from Ohio wrote, "I've been the overlooked daughter my entire life. My parents spent thousands on my brother's college tuition but told me I had to take out loans because girls don't need as much education. Reading your story made me feel less alone. Thank you for standing up for yourself. A man named Julian from Texas sent a long email detailing how his parents had prioritized his younger sister's gymnastics career over his education, draining the family's savings to pay for coaching and competitions. Had put himself through community college and now ran a successful construction business, but his parents still introduced him as our son who never went to a real university. The messages kept coming, dozens of them, then hundreds. By the end of the week, I'd received over 500 emails from people who saw themselves in my story. People who'd been overlooked, dismissed, and taken for granted by their families. People who understood what it felt like to achieve something incredible and have no one to celebrate with. I couldn't respond to all of them, but I read every single one, and with each message I felt a little less alone. On Wednesday, Frederick Sinclair called me personally. Harper, I wanted to reach out after seeing the news coverage. I hope you're doing all right. I was surprised, Head called. CEOs of major corporations didn't usually check in on their partners like this. I'm fine, I said, though my voice probably didn't sound convincing. Thank you for asking. He chuckled. You don't have to pretend with me. I've been where you are. When I was your age, I was building my first company, and my family thought I was wasting my time. My father told me I should get a real job instead of chasing pipe dreams. He didn't come to the launch party for my first product. Didn't even call to congratulate me. It took me years to realize that his opinion didn't define my worth. His words hit me harder than I expected. What did you do? I asked. I stopped waiting for his approval. I built the life I wanted with people who respected and valued me. And eventually, I realized I didn't need him to be proud of me. I was proud of myself, and that was enough. He paused. Harper, you made the right call giving those seats to your team. That took guts, and it told me everything I need to know about your character, which is why I'd like to offer you a position on our advisory board. $200,000 a year, plus equity options. What do you say? I nearly dropped the phone. Are you serious? Completely. You're exactly the kind of leader we want associated with our company. Think about it and let me know. When I hung up, I sat in stunned silence for a long moment. Then I called Riley and Marlon into my office and told them the news. Riley screamed. Marlon broke into a rare grin and pulled me into a hug. The offers kept coming. 2 venture capitalists who'd been at the gala reached out, wanting to invest an additional $5 million in edutech solutions. A Forbes journalist requested an interview for an article about young CEOs redefining success. A podcast focused on women in tech invited me to be a guest. Riley and Marlon were getting attention too. A recruiter from Amazon contacted Riley about a senior operations role. A startup in Silicon Valley tried to poach Marlon with a salary nearly double what I was paying him, but both of them turned down the offers without hesitation. We're not going anywhere, Riley said firmly when I asked if she was sure. We built this together. We're seeing it through together. On Friday, I received a message that caught me completely off guard. It was from Quinn Delaney, a girl I'd been friends with in high school. We'd lost touch after graduation, but she'd apparently been following the story online. Her message was short but heartfelt. Harper, I just read about what happened with your parents. I don't know if you remember me, but I wanted you to know I understand. My family has always favored my younger brother. I've felt invisible my entire life. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. I did remember Quinn. She'd been quiet and artistic, always sketching in the margins of her notebooks. We'd bonded over a shared love of terrible 90s movies and cheap pizza. I hadn't thought about her in years, but seeing her name brought back a flood of warm memories. I messaged her back, and we agreed to meet for coffee the following Tuesday. When I walked into the little cafe near my apartment, I spotted her immediately. She looked almost the same, just older, with streaks of gray in her dark hair and smile lines around her eyes. We talked for 3 hours. She told me about her life, about how she'd become a graphic designer, but her parents still introduced her as our daughter who does art stuff. while her brother, a dentist, was described as so successful. We're so proud. She told me about the years Shed spent trying to earn their approval and how Shed finally stopped trying 6 months ago. I joined a support group, she said. It's for adult children of toxic families. There are about 15 of us, and we meet every week. It's been life-changing, honestly. Would you want to come to a meeting? I hesitated. The idea of sitting in a circle and sharing my feelings with strangers sounded uncomfortable. But Quinn must have seen my reluctance, because she added, "You don't have to talk if you don't want to. Just come and listen. I think it would help." So the following Thursday, I went. The meeting was held in the basement of a community center, in a room with folding chairs arranged in a circle. The people there ranged from their 20s to their 60s, from all different backgrounds and walks of life. But when they started sharing their stories, I realized we all had one thing in common. We'd all been hurt by the people who were supposed to love us the most. And we were all trying to figure out how to heal. I didn't talk that first night. I just listened. But by the end of the meeting, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. For 3 weeks, I heard nothing from my family. No calls, no texts, no emails. I told myself it was for the best. I threw myself into work, expanding EduTech solutions with the new funding, hiring a dozen new employees, and finalizing plans to roll out the platform in 10 additional states. I attended the support group meetings every Thursday, and slowly, I started to open up. I talked about my childhood, about always feeling like I came second. I talked about the gala, about the empty seats and the decision it made. And every time I shared, the group listened without judgment, nodding in understanding. For the first time in my life, I felt truly heard. But then, on a Tuesday evening in late April, my father called. I stared at his name on my screen for a long moment. It blocked his number weeks ago, but had called from a different one, probably my mother's cell phone. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hello, Harper." His voice was warm, almost cheerful. It immediately put me on edge. My father was many things, but cheerful wasn't usually one of them. "It's good to hear your voice, sweetheart. How have you been?" I frowned. "Fine. What do you want, Dad?" He laughed, though it sounded forced. "Can't a father call to check on his daughter? I heard about the Forbes article. We're very proud of you." Proud. The word I'd been desperate to hear my entire life. And now, hearing it, it felt hollow. Empty. "Where's this coming from?" I asked. He cleared his throat. "Your mother and I have been doing a lot of thinking. We realize we haven't been as supportive as we should have been. We'd like to make it up to you. How about dinner, Saturday night, at that Italian place you used to love?" I wanted to say no. Every instinct screamed at me to hang up, but some small, stubborn part of me that still craved their approval whispered, "What if they've changed?" So I agreed. Saturday evening, I met my parents at Giovanni's, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown. They were already seated when I arrived, dressed nicely, my mother in a cream blouse and my father in a button-down shirt. They stood when they saw me, and my mother even hugged me, though it felt stiff and awkward. The first half of the meal was almost pleasant. They asked about the company, complimented my success, and even apologized for missing the gala. "We should have been there," my father said, his tone serious. "We made a mistake." I wanted to believe him. I wanted so badly to believe that they'd finally seen me, finally understood what they'd put me through. We ordered appetizers, entrees, a bottle of wine. My mother asked about Riley and Marlon, actually seeming interested in their stories. For a moment, I let myself relax. Maybe this was real. Maybe we could fix this. But then dessert arrived, and the conversation shifted. My father set down his fork and exchanged a glance with my mother. "Harper," he began, his tone turning serious. "There's something we need to talk to you about." My stomach tightened. "What is it?" "It's about Bethany," my mother said. "She and Greg are going through a tough time financially. They want to buy a bigger house now that Emma's getting older, but they can't qualify for the mortgage on their own. They need help with the down payment. I stared at them, a cold feeling creeping over me. How much help? $50,000, my father said, as if it were nothing, as if $50,000 wasn't more than most people made in a year. I set my wine glass down carefully, afraid I might throw it. You want me to give Bethany $50,000. Not give. My mother corrected quickly. Lend. They'll pay you back eventually. Eventually, I repeated flatly. My father leaned forward. Harper, you just signed a $15 million deal. You can afford it. Bethany has a family to take care of. She needs help, and you're in a position to provide it. That's what family does. We help each other. The words hit me like a physical blow. They hadn't called to apologize. They hadn't invited me to dinner because they were proud. They'd come because they wanted money. Let me get this straight, I said slowly. You didn't come to the most important night of my career. You didn't call to congratulate me afterward. But now you want me to hand over $50,000 to help my sister buy a house? My mother frowned. Don't be dramatic, Harper. This is about family. Family, I echoed. You keep using that word. But you don't know what it means. My father's expression hardened. Harper, we raised you. We fed you, clothed you, put a roof over your head. You owe us. I laughed, a bitter, broken sound. I owe you? I put myself through college. I built my company with no help from you. You didn't invest a single dollar. You didn't offer a single word of encouragement. The only thing you gave me was the motivation to prove you wrong. You're being selfish, my mother snapped. Bethany has children. She has responsibilities. You're single. You don't need all that money. And there it was. The truth they'd been dancing around my entire life. I didn't matter as much, because I didn't have the life they valued. I didn't have a husband. Didn't have kids. Didn't fit into their narrow definition of success. I stood up, pulling my purse over my shoulder. I'm not giving you a cent. My father's face turned red. Harper, sit down. We're not done talking about this. Yes, we are. I pulled out my wallet and threw $200 bills on the table. That's for dinner. Don't call me again. I walked out of the restaurant without looking back. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely unlock my car. When I got home, I collapsed on my couch and cried until I had no tears left. But this time, the tears weren't just from sadness. They were from anger and relief. Because now I knew, without a doubt, that my decision to cut them off had been the right one. The fallout came quickly. On Monday morning, Bethany posted on Facebook, "Some people get a little money and forget where they came from. My sister refuses to help our family in need. Blood is supposed to mean something, but apparently not to everyone. So disappointed." The post exploded. Within hours, it had over 200 comments. Relatives I barely knew chimed in, calling me selfish and ungrateful. Bethany's friends, people I'd never even met, piled on with their judgments. My phone rang constantly. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all calling to tell me I was wrong, that I should help my sister, that family was more important than money. I ignored every single call. But Riley didn't. She saw the post and immediately called me. "Harper, you need to respond to this. She's destroying your reputation." I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. "I don't want to get into a public fight with my family." "Then let me do it," Riley said. "I'll set the record straight." "No." My voice was firm. "It's not worth it. The people who matter know the truth." But by Wednesday, the story had spread beyond Facebook. A local news blog picked it up, running a piece titled "Family Feud. Tech CEO Refuses to Help Sister in Need." The article painted me as a cold, heartless businesswoman who'd abandoned her family. I couldn't take it anymore. That evening, I sat down and wrote a post on LinkedIn. It was long, detailed, and unflinchingly honest. I explained everything. The years of being overlooked, the gala they'd skipped, the dinner where they'd asked for money. I didn't name names, but anyone who knew me would understand who I was talking about. I ended with this. I've spent 30 years trying to earn love that was never going to be given freely. I've realized that real family isn't about blood. It's about respect, loyalty, and showing up. I'm done apologizing for choosing myself. I'm done begging for crumbs of affection from people who see me as a wallet, not a daughter. I'm building my own family now. And it's full of people who actually value me. I hit post before I could second guess myself. Within an hour, the post had 1,000 likes. By the next morning, it had 50,000. Comments poured in, almost all of them supportive. People shared their own stories of toxic families. They praised me for speaking out. They called me brave. A journalist from a major news outlet reached out, asking if I'd be willing to do an interview. I declined. This wasn't about publicity. It was about closure. And finally, after 32 years, I was starting to find it. It's been 2 years since that gala. 2 years since I gave my parents' seats to the people who actually earned them. And in that time, my life has transformed in ways I never could have imagined. The first and hardest step was cutting off contact completely. I changed my phone number. I blocked my parents and Bethany on every social media platform. I even hired a lawyer to send a cease and desist letter when my mother tried to show up at my office unannounced. It felt extreme, but it was necessary. Every time I gave them an inch, they tried to take a mile, and I was done letting them use me. I wrote them one final letter. I never sent it, but writing it helped me process everything it'd been holding inside. The letter said, I spent 30 years trying to earn your love. I worked harder than anyone I knew, achieved more than I ever dreamed possible, and it still wasn't enough. I realize now that it was never about what I did or didn't achieve. You simply chose Bethany over me from the start, and nothing I accomplished was ever going to change that. I'm done begging for crumbs of your attention. I'm done pretending it doesn't hurt. I'm building my own family now, with people who see me, value me, and celebrate me. I hope someday you realize what you lost. But even if you don't, it'll be okay, because I finally learned to be proud of myself, with or without your approval. I started therapy shortly after that. My therapist, Dr. Sandra, specialized in family trauma. She taught me about something called the golden child and the scapegoat. A dynamic where one child is idealized, and the other is blamed for everything wrong in the family. I was the scapegoat. Bethany was the golden child, and our roles had been assigned so early that we never stood a chance of escaping them. But Dr. Sandra also taught me that I didn't have to keep playing the role I'd been given. I could rewrite the script. I could choose who I let into my life and who I kept out. I could set boundaries. I could heal. It wasn't easy. There were days I wanted to call my mother. Days I almost convinced myself that maybe I was being too harsh. But then I'd remember the empty seats at the gala, the dinner where they'd asked for money, the Facebook post where Bethany had tried to destroy my reputation. And I'd remember why I'd made this choice. The support group became a lifeline. I went every Thursday without fail. I became close with several members, including Quinn, who became one of my best friends. We'd grab dinner after meetings, venting about our families and laughing about the absurdity of it all. She introduced me to her girlfriend Ava, a warm and funny woman who worked as a veterinarian. The three of us started a tradition of Sunday brunch, and those mornings became some of the highlights of my week. I also started hosting Thanksgiving at my place. That first year, 15 people showed up: Riley, Marlon, Quinn, Ava, and 11 others from the support group. We cooked a massive turkey, made way too many sides, and spent the evening sharing what we were grateful for. When it was my turn, I looked around the table at all these people who'd chosen to be there, and I said, I'm grateful for all of you. You showed me what real family looks like. You showed me that I was always enough, even when the people who were supposed to love me made me feel like I want. Riley cried. So did Quinn. Hell, even Marlon got a little misty-eyed. Meanwhile, EduTech Solutions continued to grow. With the Sinclair partnership and the additional venture capital funding, we expanded into 15 states. Our revenue hit $30 million in year 3. I was featured in Forbes' 30 Under 35 list, appeared on 3 different podcasts, and was invited to speak at a dozen conferences. Riley was promoted to Chief Operating Officer. Marlon became our Chief Technology Officer. We hired over 100 employees, and I made it a point to create a company culture built on recognition and respect. Every employee's birthday was celebrated. Every work anniversary was acknowledged. We had monthly team lunches where people could share their wins, both professional and personal. I never wanted anyone who worked for me to feel the way it felt growing up, invisible and undervalued. I also started a scholarship fund called Second Chances. It provided financial support to students from difficult family backgrounds who were working to put themselves through college. We awarded $100,000 in scholarships every year. And reading the applications from these kids who'd overcome so much always reminded me why I'd started this journey in the first place. One evening, I received an email from a woman named Dr. Elena Martinez. She was organizing a TED Talk event focused on resilience and family dynamics, and she wanted me to be one of the speakers. I'd turned down dozens of speaking requests over the past 2 years, but something about this one felt different. I said yes. The TED Talk took place on a rainy Saturday in November, 2 years and 8 months after the gala. I stood backstage, my heart pounding, as the host introduced me. When I walked onto the stage, the lights were blinding, but as my eyes adjusted, I saw Riley, Marlon, Quinn, and Ava sitting in the front row, grinning up at me. I took a deep breath and began. My name is Harper Whitman, and I'm here to talk about family. Not the family you're born into, but the family you build. I told them the story, the childhood of being overlooked, the gala my parents skipped, the decision to give their seats to Riley and Marlon, the fallout, the betrayal, the eventual freedom. I didn't hold back. I was raw, honest, and vulnerable in a way I'd never been publicly before. And when I got to the end, I said, for most of my life, I believed that my worth was determined by whether or not my parents loved me. I thought if I could just achieve enough, accomplish enough, be enough, they'd finally see me. But I was wrong. My worth was never dependent on their approval. It was always there, waiting for me to recognize it myself. Family isn't about blood. It's about showing up. It's about valuing the people who value you. And it's about having the courage to walk away from relationships that diminish you, even when those relationships are with the people who gave you life. I paused, letting the words settle. 2 years ago, I gave my parents seats to the people who earned them. And in doing so, I finally earned my own freedom. The audience erupted into applause. It went on for 5 full minutes, a standing ovation that left me speechless. People were crying. Strangers came up to me afterward, hugging me, thanking me for telling my story. One woman told me she was going to go home and finally set boundaries with her mother. A man said he'd been estranged from his family for years and had been feeling guilty, but my talk helped him realize he'd made the right choice. I didn't feel like a hero. I just felt like someone who'd survived. But maybe that was enough. That night, Riley, Marlon, Quinn, Ava, and I went out to celebrate. We went to a karaoke bar, of all places, and sang terrible renditions of 80s power ballads until our voices were hoarse. Marlon, who I'd never heard sing a single note in all the years I'd known him, absolutely killed a performance of Don't Stop Believin'. We laughed until we cried, and as I looked around at these people who'd become my family, I realized something. I was happy, truly, deeply happy. Not because I'd achieved some impossible level of success, not because I'd finally gotten revenge on my parents, but because I'd learned to value myself. I'd learned that I was worthy of love, respect, and celebration, not because of what I accomplished, but because of who I was. And I'd found people who saw that too. As I'm recording this story today, it's been nearly 3 years since the gala. I still haven't spoken to my parents or Bethany. I don't know if I ever will. Part of me wonders if they ever think about me, if they ever regret their choices. But mostly, I don't think about them at all. I'm too busy living the life I've built. EduTech Solutions just opened offices in 3 new states. Riley got engaged to a wonderful man named Colin who treats her like a queen. Marlon adopted a dog named Pixel who he brings to the office every day. Quinn and Ava got married in a small ceremony last spring, and I was honored to be Quinn's maid of honor. The support group still meets every Thursday, and I still go whenever I can. We've helped each other through breakups, job losses, health scares, and family drama. We've celebrated promotions, new relationships, and personal victories. We've become a family in the truest sense of the word. So if you're out there feeling invisible, overlooked, or undervalued by the people who are supposed to love you, I want you to know something. It's not your fault. You are not too much or not enough. You are exactly who you're supposed to be. And there are people out there who will see you, celebrate you, and love you for exactly who you are. Sometimes you have to walk away from the family you were born into to find the family you deserve. It's scary, and it's painful, and some people will judge you for it. But your peace is worth more than their approval. Your happiness is worth more than their comfort, and your life is worth more than their expectations. I gave my parents' seats to the people who earned them. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose yourself over toxic family members? Have you ever felt overlooked or undervalued by the people who were supposed to support you? Drop your story in the comments below. Let's build a community where we can all support each other. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear it. Sometimes knowing you're not alone makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being part of this journey. And remember, you are worthy of love, respect, and celebration, exactly as you are. I'm rooting for you. Now go out there and build the family you deserve.